Welcome all to the Environmental Protection Committee meeting for Community Board 1. I'm Alice Blank, the chair. We're joined by Wendy Chapman, co-chair, and Diana Sweetie, director of planning. And we're going to start the agenda, which is a review with Laura Dodge from Excel Environmental, our community consultant on the 250 Water Street Brownfield Cleanup Program. And take it away, Laura. Thank you. Uh-oh. Did we start?
Okay, here we go. Sorry. Wasn't sure where I left off, the muting wise. I'm trying to keep it, I'm still driving, so I apologize for any background noise.
Gosh.
So where we are is the remedial design investigation fieldwork was completed in February. So that enabled Langen HHC to confirm, what they needed to be doing with respect to air quality monitoring. There were some tweaks to the community air monitoring program to put in some additional best management practices and an additional mercury vapor analyzer handheld instruments. Now there'll be 2 during the remediation. Nothing other than those changes of significance were made because there weren't any increased, action level exceedances or anything like that with respect to the mercury concentrations or the VOC concentrations or dust. Everything was pretty much in line with what had been previously found, which is good news when you think about, what could have potentially happened when it comes to the mercury impacted area. So the test pit work showed, no elevated concentrations emanating from that area when they did the test pit work. They did collect soil samples for characterizing the soil for disposal once the excavation work starts. They can just dig and haul it, meaning it's kind of an industry term that means you excavate and then you place it right in a truck and it goes off-site. So that minimizes the amount of on-site staging or stockpiling you have to do, which is what we want to see. We don't want the soil hanging out on the site. We want it excavated and put right in trucks. Trucks will be covered and then they'll be off-site out for disposal. So that work was completed. Those reports are being generated. One report on the initial test pit investigation was already drafted and given to DEC. They are reviewing it. They will provide it to Tom Fusillo for the Blue School and I once their DEC and DOH are done with their review. So I have not seen it yet. There's a second report that's being generated on the waste characterization. That's the soil boring data and disposal information for that soil. That one, DEC has indicated to me today that report will be coming to them sometime this week. They have not received it yet. There are additional borings being done. I think everyone should have received a notice from HHC, from Ricky Wong, that they need to go back out and do a few more soil borings for characterizing some of the soil. And that is not uncommon in our industry when you initially go out and do characterization for soil. At times, the disposal facility will require or request additional samples, and that's apparently what happened. And so they're remobilizing to go back out this Saturday to conduct, I think it's 12 additional soil borings, and that should be all completed in one day. If they don't complete it Saturday, they have Sunday to complete it. So they're doing that work again when school is not in session. So fast forward then to what's going to happen next. The remediation work plan is being modified just to update the community air monitoring plan with the additional best management practices and the addition of another Jerome 505 handheld mercury vapor analyzer, and just to memorialize the changes that were already made when the remedial design investigation was done, because there were changes made at that time, and those changes will be memorialized. The schedule for the remediation work plan is also being updated. So the way the work is now being done is the very first field activity in terms of intrusive subsurface activity will be excavation in the south western corner of the site at Beekman and Water Street to install 4 drilled piles, steel piles, that will become the basis of the first concrete pile cap for the structural foundation for the building. That work is scheduled tentatively right now to start the first or second week in May. It was, ideally AJC Langen had, hoped that that work would start sometime mid-April, but it was always contingent upon them having all the data in hand that they needed, having waste disposal approval, having other approvals, having their contractor on board. There was a lot of work that they had to do to be able to achieve that start date. So the update I received today from DEC is that the work is still tentatively scheduled for the first or second week in May. What will happen starting latter part of this week is going to be the installation of the fencing around the parking lot. So activities in the parking lot will start to cease. DEC just told me today that that fencing is tentatively scheduled to begin on Thursday of this week. I did not have a chance to follow up with them after receiving that email. So I'm not, clear as to why they would have, proposed to start on a Thursday. It's a little unusual, but that's what they're indicating. So after this initial pile activity, which will involve, again, excavating down to a depth of about 8 feet to install these 4 drilled steel piles. So those are drilled piles. And then they're going to come in after that and install sheet piling, which will be driven. And then they're going to excavate further down to a depth of about 18 feet in order to install the pile cap. So that activity will involve excavation of impacted soil. That will require their approval from the disposal facility. So you can see why they need to do the additional soil borings this weekend to get that data in hand, to get their disposal facility approval before they would start this initial foundation work in early May. That activity technically is the start of the remediation because they are going to be excavating impacted soil in that corner. It's not in an impacted area in terms of elevated mercury concentrations, but it does have historic fill-like concentrations, and that material has to be disposed of. So that is technically going to be the start of the quote-unquote remedial action, because it may not look like remedial activity, but it does involve excavation of impacted soil. And then the next activity after that is complete is the initiation of the mercury hotspot soil excavation and the removal of the underground storage tanks and the petroleum impacted soil. That Howard Hughes sent in, or Langen on behalf of HHC, sent into DEC a request to modify the schedule for the remediation so that that work won't start until the end of the school year for both Peckslip and the Blue School. That would be late June, early July, and that was in consideration of our request that that activity not be conducted when school is in session. So it was, I think, in consideration of the community's request, that is appreciated, that they did, listen to our concerns about not having that work done while school was in session. This initial foundation work, obviously, once that gets underway, that will be while school's in session, but it won't be before or during the week when the math testing is occurring, I believe, at Peckslip for the 3rd to 8th graders, because it's not scheduled to begin until the 1st or 2nd week in May. And that, again, is still a tentative date. I do not think it's going to happen any earlier than that, and it might still be slightly later than that, because it all depends upon all of the other approvals being in hand, including the waste disposal approval. And honestly, if they're doing the soil boring for the waste disposal this weekend, I mean, it's going to be pushing it to be able to start the first week in May. because they have to get the analytical results back from that drilling. They have to send that data into the waste disposal facility. They have to get the approval. And, you know, it can be done. I mean, they can be planning it so that everything gets done very efficiently, but it definitely is an optimistic schedule to start the first week in May, I think. So the fencing going up this Thursday is the first new bit of information. Today was the first time that we were told that that work was supposed to start. So I'll find out more tomorrow from DEC as to, you know, exactly when. I would imagine, I mean, obviously I would think that the parking lot operations would need to cease by then. So it sort of seems a little quick to be going from it's still operating to our fencing is going up, unless the fence installation takes so long that they're just going to allow the operator to continue until they absolutely positively have to close. That's what I'll find out tomorrow. They didn't really elaborate. So that's basically right now where we are. We're still waiting for the RDI reports, you know, that are going to describe and have a formal, you know, document regarding the results. We've seen all the data, so we know all the results, but we still need to see the actual reports. And then we still also need to see the schedule for the full-scale remediation, which they're still working on. You know, we also don't know the full duration of the mercury-impacted soil excavation activity or the underground storage tank activity, which will start late June, early July. We don't have that schedule yet either. So that's all being worked on, I believe, by Howard Hughes and Langen.
Laura,
So
thank you
yeah.
much. I wanted to just, I see that Mimi Gorodetsky is here from Langen, and we have representatives from HHC, a few actually, Adam and I saw some, and Mark. If there's anything you'd like to add to this report before we open it up to questions.
No, I mean, I think that was a good overview, and generally, I think there are a few details in there, but it was accurate from our perspective. We are planning to we hope commence the fence installation this Thursday, and then as Laura was saying, we would be working on that over about a week or so, along with limited demolition of the structures. Well, it's the parking booth, small structure on the site, and getting ready to start the work early in May, the week of May 2nd, the actual excavation and beginning of the initial foundation work.
Great. Can you just confirm that there won't be any disruptive work during the state math tests next week on April 26th and 27th? That seems to be an understandable and reasonable concern of many community members living there.
Yes, and we've been in touch with Peckslip School. We won't be doing anything that disrupts their statewide testing.
Thanks a lot. Did you want to add anything, Mimi?
Nope, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, great. I assume you'll be sticking around for part 2 here on the archaeological plans. So let me open it up to questions. Does anyone from the committee, or Committee Board 1, have any questions? So far, I don't see any hands up, but feel free. Okay. Unusual, but see no questions. And anybody from the attendee list? All right. I don't see anyone here. Nope. Diana, you too? Okay.
Wendy's hand just went up.
Wendy's hand. There we go. Wendy, go ahead.
I don't think I put my hand up. I'm confused.
Oh,
Okay, Wendy, I'll take it down. Thank
Sorry
you.
about that.
Not a problem. You can do anything you like. It's your birthday. Okay, so so we're going to move right into the second part of our agenda, which are a presentation of the archaeological plans for 250 Water Street. This comes up, of course, because of this, you know, imminent work that's looking to do excavation down to below 18 feet, which would begin to really, you know, take in a kind of archaeological documentary study material, of which there is quite a bit. it's an interesting opportunity for the community if we do find things there, such as been found in the past at other neighboring sites. So we very kindly, HAC was able to pull this off and come to present to us tonight. I thought it was AQRF, who is a consultant working with HHC. Maybe, I don't know if they're on, but, or.
That's correct.
Okay, terrific. So they are responsible, that firm, for, among other things, the archaeological documentary study, which was sent, which I think was last updated in April of 2021, last year, which was sent around, and which Diana will put up, if we can, the links to all of these studies, which are quite interesting. And the study confirms that there is indeed a high likelihood that significant historic artifacts may be found at the site. So in doing this kind of work, the question is, one, how is this being done to assure that these kinds of things are found and set aside? And two, that this testing and the work, the archaeological monitoring, is occurring during remediation work, potentially within soils that have been identified as contaminated. How does that work in terms of, making sure that everything and every part of this is safe to both the workers and the community around it? So I don't know exactly who is presenting, but Adam, I'll let you introduce them if you would be so kind, from AQRF, and thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Alice. Elizabeth Mead from AQRF is going to walk everyone through our archaeological process and work plan. So I will turn it over to her. She has a PowerPoint that hopefully can be shared, and she'll take everyone through it.
Hey everybody, can you see my slides?
Yes.
Did I do that? All right, great.
Thank you.
Still 2 years in, I'm still not used to everything being digital. Hello, thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here to kind of discuss our work plan and what we're proposing to do at the site. I just have a few slides here to kind of walk you through everything, and then we can open it up to questions at the end. So just to give you a little bit of an introduction to me, I'm an archaeologist with AQRF. I received my PhD from the CUNY Graduate Center. All of my academic education has been right here in New York City, so I'm very much a born and raised New York City archaeologist. I am a registered professional archaeologist. I exceed all the criteria for qualified archaeologists as established by LPC, the Secretary of the Interior, and many other standards for qualified archaeologists. I've been working almost 20 years as an archaeologist in New York. I've worked on all different types of sites, including a lot of landfill sites along the East River. And I will be part of the on-site AQRF archaeology team as this monitoring and later testing progresses. So just to give you a little background then about AQRF and what we are capable of doing, we have a cultural resources department staffed with archaeologists and architectural historians. Our archaeology group has done all levels of archaeological investigation throughout New York City and across the Northeast. We've done extensive monitoring and analysis, specifically in Lower Manhattan. We worked on a large landfill site during the World Trade Center redevelopment. During that work, we documented a number of landfill deposits, landfill retaining structures. We are the firm that documented and recovered the World Trade Center ship back in 2010. And we also have an extensive experience working on contaminated sites and in contaminated materials. And most of our archaeologists have special training to work on hazardous sites and in contaminated soils. This was already sort of introduced a little earlier, but I just kind of want to give some of the background to the archaeology work that we've already completed on the site. As was mentioned, we completed a topic intensive documentary study for the site in 2021. That's essentially a desktop report, a research study that goes over all previous archaeological analyses of a project site, as well as folding in some new research, more updated map work, and some new research based on more recent things like soil borings and other analyses that have happened since any previous archaeological work on a site was completed. So we really went through everything we could find to tell us about the history of this site and what is known about previous archaeology that had happened. As a result, as you mentioned, we identified that portions of the site were identified as highly sensitive for certain types of archaeological resources that I'll get into a little bit more in a few minutes. And our archaeological report was approved by the Landmarks Preservation Commission in April 2021. Following the approval of that report, and given the recommendation that Phase 1B archaeological monitoring or testing was required on the site, we then prepared a work plan. This is a standard document that Landmarks requires outlining the scope of work for any proposed archaeological investigation. We prepared this document in consultation with both the project team. We had lots of meetings to go over the different components of the work and how the construction would proceed. And we also prepared this in consultation with LPC and made any revisions they requested given what we were able to determine about how best to complete the archaeology. And again, this document was submitted to and reviewed by LPC, and they approved it in March of this year. Just to take one step further back to kind of just walk you through the previous archaeological investigations that have happened on this site, there are two known projects that resulted in archaeology of this site. One was for a project that was proposed in the early 2000s but never constructed. That involved a documentary research study similar to what we prepared in 2000 that similarly reached conclusions about the site's archaeological sensitivity. As a result, they completed some initial archaeological testing in 2002. But as the project did not advance, no further work was determined necessary. There was also a research study completed in 2003 as part of the Second Avenue subway project. This site was initially identified as a potential staging area in association with the construction of the subway. That also did not advance and no further work was completed. But those three investigations served as the background for our 2021 topic intensive study. So as a result of our study, looking back through those three reports and folding in some new analysis, some new information, we took a really close look just to understand the history of the site, the progression of its development. So like a lot of sites along the East River waterfront, most of the site is composed of landfill. Beginning in the 17th and 18th century, individual water lots would have been granted to merchants, local residents for filling purposes. The map on the top left from 1873 shows you those lots. It also depicts the original water lines, the shorelines from high and low tide before this landfilling occurred. So using maps like this, we were able to reconstruct the landfilling process. This 1776 map on the bottom here shows you that by the end of the 18th century, the property was almost entirely filled in. Later on, the site, after the landfill had settled and was developable, was entirely developed by the 19th century with a variety of residential and commercial structures. Those 19th century structures were really the subject of the testing that occurred in 2002. They did not find extensive, significant deposits associated with that development. So we don't believe that there is much archaeological sensitivity associated with those later deposits, but there's still a good chance that the site is going to have evidence of that landfilling process at greater depths. So what our study determined that the site is still sensitive for in light of the previous archaeological testing and all this research that has been completed is that there is a low sensitivity that along the shoreline where that original shoreline was located prior to landfilling efforts, that there could be pre-contact resources that's related to the Native American and indigenous occupation of the area. Given the extent to which the site was developed later on, that sensitivity is considered to be low. But the site is considered to have high sensitivity for as I mentioned, archaeological resources associated with that landfilling process. So that's the landfill itself, the dirt and soil and garbage and whatever else would have been thrown into the waterfront to actually fill out and create land on which structures can be built. Also, landfill retaining structures, which are the large timber boxes or cribbing that would have been built to retain that soil deposit, to hold it in place and create structural support for buildings in the future. There is a chance, not very likely, but a chance that there could have been something along the lines of a sunken vessel or sunken ship that would have been incorporated into the landfill. There have been a small number of archaeological discoveries of those types of ships. Given the presence of documented shipyards in the vicinity of this project site, that makes it a little more likely, but still the overall likelihood is considered to be low. And then also, what's most likely to be present is waterfront structures. So things like the old docks and piers and wharves that would have lined the waterfront during the historic period. Because very often during the landfilling process, it was much easier to just bury those and use them to help retain and support the new landfill. So you very often find those structures intact throughout these landfill sites. And that's really what the focus of our investigation is going to emphasize. So for our investigation, what we propose to do, we do intend to have an archaeologist monitoring any excavation completed on the site below a depth of 8 feet. As I mentioned, there was extensive 19th century development on the site. There's evidence that the majority of the site to that 8-foot depth was disturbed by later basement excavation. So that's not considered to be at the same level of sensitivity as lower deposits. So 8 feet is kind of our buffer zone. Anywhere below that level, we will have somebody on site to monitor. The monitor will essentially stand there and observe the excavation as it proceeds, to document, photograph, take video, to look for evidence of these landfill retaining structures and landfill deposits. We have protocols in place to collect and sample artifacts from both non-hazardous and hazardous soils where possible. There are decontamination protocols in our work plan in the event that there are certain types of artifacts that could be decontaminated for later analysis to be removed from the site. And essentially all of our work will be done in consultation with LPC throughout the entire process. They will review all of our final deliverables, and we will be in touch with them as the process continues, as the monitoring is ongoing, and in the event that anything is found. That's for the monitoring component. Once the soil remediation is complete, when the excavation has gone down to a depth where the soil is no longer considered to present a health hazard, we do plan to do some limited archaeological test trenching where we can direct a backhoe ourselves as the archaeologist. In certain locations, we've selected up to 5 trench locations to further document any resources that might be on the site in a controlled manner. So whereas we are not just watching the construction crew or the remediation crew excavate, we are actually specifically directing the excavation for the benefit of the archaeological work. Those trenches are expected to be about 6 by 20 feet. The depth might depend on what we're seeing and the context and safety concerns, but we do plan to do up to 5 of those kind of controlled sample trenches just to see if that will provide a closer look, a better look at some of the resources that might be present on the site. Once the field work is completed, we will take any decontaminated or clean artifacts back for analysis, basic cataloging, identification of certain types of artifacts, dating the artifacts, that sort of thing. Pretty straightforward, standard archaeological practice. We will prepare a final report to submit to LPC for review. If LPC asks for any revisions, we'll make them. And once the final report is approved by LPC, it will be publicly available on their website, just like all archaeology reports completed in New York City. So that was what I prepared to speak with you. I guess if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
That was terrific, Elizabeth. Thank you so much. Really, really interesting. And let's open it up for questions again from community board members, committee members. Anybody have a question or follow-up comment? Okay. I see one from Bob Schneck. Go ahead, Bob.
I was just wondering, there's a number of reports that are done downtown, for example. Does anyone ever consolidate them or kind of use them to write histories or anything? Or is there any kind of, once this report's done, what's it part of?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So Landmarks does make everything that is subject to city environmental quality review public on their website. So anyone, archaeologists, historians, members of the public can view any of those reports at any time. They're freely available. There's no download restrictions. Other archaeologists will typically use them when researching a particular area to see what other people have found, to document the archaeological record in a given region. And we do hear often from historians or even just interested people who stumble on our reports, people who are using them for other sources. So that's a big reason why Landmarks does make them public. It's because they want to make sure that the information is as accessible to the public as possible and used in as many ways as can kind of benefit local history and education.
Is there anything that's particularly interesting about this site that makes it kind of compelling?
It's the landfill issue. It's particularly old landfill. It's the landfill stretched out further and further as time went on. So this actually, Pearl Street being the original waterfront, means that this site could contain some of the oldest landfill in along the East River. So there is some evidence of Dutch warehouses and shipyards. So that's the sort of thing we will be looking for.
An important part of this site, as it was developed, was about a mercury factory. So is that any place in the archaeological study here?
Not really. That's essentially part of that later development episode that I talked about, where there were a lot more buildings with basements that kind of disturbed some of the more shallow deposits. And the archaeological testing that was done in 2002 really confirmed that those buildings created, the basements of those buildings created quite a bit of disturbance that eliminated a lot of the archaeological sensitivity of the upper levels. So we're really focused on everything from a depth of 8 feet and below.
So my final question is, below 8 feet, what period is it you're looking at? It obviously goes to pre-contact, but what kind of is the top of it?
So 8 feet is a conservative estimate. The basement disturbance could actually go a bit deeper. That 8 feet is just where we consider safe to start the monitoring process so that we don't miss anything. But the landfill that occupies parts of this site dates to some of it back to the 17th century. So it could be 17th or 18th century based on the progression of the landfill on the block.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks very much. Richard Corman.
Hi, yeah, thanks for this. It's really very, very interesting. A couple of questions maybe. One is, what do you do with the artifacts when you find them after documentation, or aside from that?
So that analysis process happens first, cataloging, dating them, identifying, that sort of thing. As part of the overall site analysis and documentation, one of the things that's required under City Environmental Quality Review, under Landmarks guidelines, is based on the age of the artifacts, the type of artifacts, and what else is found on the site. Part of the archaeological analysis will be making a determination as to whether the site is considered historically significant, which is defined by the city essentially as being eligible for listing on the state and national registers of historic places. So if the artifacts are determined to have that eligibility, then they will have to be curated in a museum or a repository long term. So that's essentially what happens to artifacts that are determined to be significant. If they're not determined to be significant, then they may have some other use. Either sometimes they get donated to local educational programs that use artifacts in classrooms for things like history research, history education, that sort of thing. So it kind of depends on what else is found on the site and how the artifact assemblage, what criteria is used to determine their significance.
And if it's determined to be a significant, historically significant site, does that affect the construction in any way?
Not for archaeology. The archaeological process is itself destructive, so taking the artifacts out of the ground essentially alters the site. So the curation of the artifacts is typically considered to be the necessary permanent mitigation for any impacts to an archaeological site. What's found on the site itself is usually disturbed in the process of doing the archaeology.
Yeah, I would think so. Yeah,
And
thank you
for
very
a site like this, these landfill retaining structures are very, very large. So usually they're impossible to document without some level of destruction.
Thanks. Appreciate it very much.
Yeah.
Can I just follow up? Sorry, Wendy, I'll be right there. But I just want to follow up on Richard's question. So could you just give an example where very excitedly we find some hull of a ship, for example, not so dissimilar to something found in 2010. What then would happen? I mean, how does that, first of all, how does it affect HHC and their work schedule and, the costs that would have to be in timing and all of that? Like, how does that sort of work?
So we do have some protocols in the work plan for addressing ships specifically. It is somewhat hard to predict, given that there are so many variables that could happen. It's impossible to know the size of the ship, the location, the depth, the extent to which it might extend into contaminated soils. So we essentially have a strategy where if there is a ship found, to kind of stop and come up with a more specific plan. But essentially, I could tell you from our experience on the World Trade Center ship, it was really a very quick, controlled process, a brief work stoppage to assemble a team, to come up with a plan, and then really just enacting that plan under the oversight of Landmarks Preservation Commission. So they would be very involved in the process. And for the World Trade Center ship, the whole process from discovery to the removal of the last piece of timber was about 3 weeks. So we were able to mobilize very, very quickly. We could probably mobilize a bit quicker now that we've done it before. If the ship were larger than that, we might have to do a different process, maybe more of a sampling strategy, which is similar to what was done when a ship was found on site at 175 Water Street. That was a much larger vessel, and the archaeologists only documented part of it. So there's a lot of different avenues for that level of documentation, but it's kind of hard to predict without knowing what's in front of you and knowing what's there. So it could go a number of different ways, but because this has been done before, specifically because we've done it before, we do know how to kind of do that mobilization, assemble a team, and come up with a plan very rapidly.
I'm glad you brought up the 175 Water Street ship. In fact, where did that ship end up, and where did the World Trade Center ship end up? How did they get archived?
So for 175 Water Street, that one was a much larger vessel. As I mentioned, it had, I believe, 3 full decks. So much more substantial vessel. They salvaged, I believe, the front 18 feet of it. And it was taken to a museum in Virginia. I'm not sure that anything has happened with it recently. It might still be in storage. Since that was not a project I worked on myself, I don't know all the details. For the World Trade Center ship, I can provide plenty of information. I could probably talk for far too long about it. But so for that, when we removed it from the site, it was first taken to a temporary storage location before being transferred to Texas A&M, which has one of the largest and best maritime archaeology programs in the nation. So that's where it's been since 2010 to kind of initiate the long-term preservation process. The ship, it takes a number of years to get timbers that have been buried for so long in a stable condition. So at Texas A&M, they're being slowly treated. They'll eventually be dried out and reassembled and will be transported to the New York State Museum, where they're building a special exhibit for its permanent curation.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, it's always struck me, and I mentioned it to social of HHC, that this is an extraordinary opportunity if anything were found, because of course you have a seaport museum here, which you're trying to support. And it seems like these kinds of artifacts would be a tremendous draw. And so I certainly hope maybe we could work together in finding out what's become of the 175 Water Street ship. But anyway, I thank you for answering that. And then just on the trenches, how do you come up with 5? Is that, and you say up to 5? I mean, is that just a sort of based on the square footage of the lot?
Yeah, it's just to try and get a good sample of it. But after we complete the monitoring of the upper levels, we should have a better sense of where some of these landfill structures may be. So up to 5 is we is just to kind of account for a good size sample. It might not be that many is practical, which is why we say up to. There could be safety concerns in certain areas. It could be that we see that the landfill resources don't go as deep in certain areas, so it's not worth testing. You know, we're by the time we get to the trench depths, we're going to be pretty far down on the site, so it's going to be a low depth to begin with. So up to 5 is just to kind of account for the most number that would make up a good sample of the site. These types of trenches are usually, you never excavate the whole site for something like this. You just do a sample. So we figured 5 of that size was a good sample size, given what we know about the site and what the testing that was completed in 2002 showed.
So just to get specific, for those of us who aren't understanding it fully, like myself, in the highly sensitive area for archaeological resources on the southern half of the site, in the oldest landfill of Manhattan, where it is imminent to be excavated below the 8 feet, coming up before June 1st or whatever the deadline is there for this. How you say there'll be a monitor? Could you just describe like what the process will be, so the outcomes, folks to begin the work and what happens?
Essentially, we just find a safe space on the site, where you're not too close to any of the machinery, where there's no slip and fall hazards, and we essentially just monitor. It's rather simple. The archaeologist will stand there, observe the excavation, look for the types of deposits we may need to sample, extensive numbers of artifacts, large timbers, evidence of those landfill retaining structures that I mentioned.
And you're there daily? And is it one person that's there daily throughout the excavation? Is that how it works?
Yeah, for a site like this, it's usually one person, and then if something is found that requires more people, there are usually other people on call. And again, that's outlined in the work plan as well. So it will essentially be up to the monitor on site to determine if more archaeologists might be needed. If something of particular interest is found, a ship, for example. But yes, essentially it's just one person monitoring the excavation as it goes, taking samples where necessary, where possible, and making some observations, documenting any of these landfill structures that they might find through photographs, video, measured drawings, that sort of thing.
Okay, and last question, I think it's last, is the phase 1B archaeological investigation that was done in 2002, which did not get improved by landmarks, that has since been approved somehow, or?
No. Yeah, it's my understanding that that work has not been approved, so we're essentially starting over in landmarks' eyes. I mean, there was whatever excavation they did disturbed certain deposits, but I think, and this is probably a question that landmarks would have to answer. But as far as we know, that report was not accepted by them, and that's why it's not posted to their website.
Doesn't that investigation have to be conducted and approved or prior to doing this work, or?
Well, no, it was completed. They didn't approve the report. The physical testing happened. It was written up in a report submitted to Landmarks, and Landmarks rejected the final report. And so the report was never resubmitted, according, and again, this was something Landmarks would have to answer. Whatever changes Landmarks asked them to make were not made.
All right. Well, Diana, maybe we can follow up on the Landmarks aspect of that, and you all could help us. Okay. Sorry, I jumped in there in front of Wendy. Wendy Chapman.
No, actually, that's fine, Allison. You asked some of the questions I was going to ask, especially about the trenches. I wanted to ask, I found those maps incredibly interesting, especially that Water Street was actually, I mean, I should have known that, the edge of the water and the peck slip went in there. I was curious, when you start digging, especially down to 20 feet, what is the situation with the water table, and how does that affect the things that you find? Because, I mean, I think you're going to hit water, or am I mistaken? And if you are doing that, that adds an element of complexity to the whole thing. How do you handle that?
Yes, so that is also addressed in our work plan. And the water table was a problem for the 2002 testing. The trenches they were excavating were flooded. Because the site is going to have a whole dewatering process associated with the construction, we're essentially going to piggyback on that. So by the time we get to those trench levels, there should have already been dewatering. So the groundwater should be lower by the time we get to excavate in that area.
Okay, and the idea is that it's constantly, that water's being pumped out as you go. Is that the idea? Or there's some sort of like bathtub slurry wall temporary? I know it's not made yet, it's under construction. Or is it just constantly being pumped out as you go? And where does that water go? I mean, because that water may, be contaminated.
Yeah, I would, if Mimi's still on the call, I would defer to her and Adam on those issues, but we do have that specifically outlined in our work plan, or at least a brief summary of it. So that's not related specifically to the archaeology. So I don't think I'm the right person to answer those questions.
Fair enough. You're exactly right. That's not your area of expertise, but I was thinking it would complicate your work. And then one other thing, I'm just curious, what do you, and obviously you don't know until you get there, but you've done other types of things. What type of fill do you expect to be there? I mean, besides people are talking about timber and ships, but are we also thinking about, like, I mean, is this something where it's like teacups and pottery as well? I mean,
that's it exactly. Yeah. So the soils that were used for land filling purposes at that time were pretty much just household garbage and dirt and whatever they could find and throw in. So it's usually get quite a variety, quite a mix. There's often a lot of faunal remains, of animal remains from local butcher shops. You get a lot of shoe leather. It's pretty much whatever was dumped in by the neighborhood, whatever might have been thrown off incoming ships. Sometimes you get ship ballast. So it's really just a wide variety of essentially garbage, but archaeologists love garbage. So that's one of our favorite things to find. So you normally expect quite a wide variety of just artifacts to be in the fill, and that's one of the things we'll be looking at, are particularly dense artifact concentrations as the excavation continues.
Okay, that sounds great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks. Anybody else? Questions or comments on the committee or elsewhere? I don't. Oh, yep. Vera Sung. Hey, Vera.
I had a question. So, Elizabeth, if you find something of archaeological significance, let's say a ship, and part of it actually lies outside of the site, how do you treat that? How do you treat, you're just going to see that portion of it and you cut it off, or how do you treat that? I'm just curious.
That would have to be something that would be discussed in coordination with Landmarks to determine the appropriate mitigation and documentation. I can tell you that for sites like 175 Water Street, for another ship that was found in the street outside the South Street Seaport Museum, they did do something along those lines of just removing certain timbers, a certain portion of a ship that would be impacted and leaving the rest in place. Typically, from an archaeological perspective, leaving something in place is considered to be the preferred alternative. As I said, archaeology itself is destructive. So again, that would have to be something that we discuss with landmarks. I guess it is a possibility, but it would really depend on the context and what we're seeing and the full extent of whatever is found.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Bob, I don't know if that's up from last time or you have another question? Bob Schneck? Okay. Obviously, I guess this is to everybody from HHC and AQRF, just to say that the community board would obviously have tremendous interest in knowing whatever is found teacup or ship hull, and that if it were, of course, not going to be uncovered and brought to the surface, that the community would be given an opportunity, if possible, and it were safe, to be able to see it and learn from it and all that wonderful stuff. It's really exciting from where I sit. So we'll look forward to hearing from you. I guess, when would we likely hear from you? Would you be coming in? Would it make sense to have other updates as the excavation goes forward, potentially after this first phase in June, when the foundation's going in? I mean, that's really I guess maybe that's to you, Adam. I'm not sure.
Why don't you let us give that some thought and discuss it? I mean, I don't certainly, if there was something significant that were found, we could report that. But again, this initial phase is quite limited. But why don't we in terms of looking forward, the overall in the overall schedule, as we get a little bit closer to how that's going to unfold starting in later in June or early July, we can suggest how we communicate the archaeology specifically going forward.
Okay, that sounds fine. Okay, last call on this. Thank you very, very much, all of you. That was extremely interesting and informative, and I'm really glad to have gotten the opportunity to get that out into the public sphere as to the sort of richness of the site and all. So thank you. I really, on behalf of the board, really appreciate it. Okay, so
thank you.
You're released, that group, and now we move on to Amy Chester of Rebuild by Design, and also Syracuse professor, who's going to present a fantastic group of projects from her students had done, and other students, and I'll let you introduce that team, Amy. It's a project that looks at green district for the west side of Lower Manhattan that we all know has not really been looked at by many. And this, I think, was called Cities at Risk. And so, Amy, welcome and thanks so much.
And thank you so much, Alice. And thank you for inviting us. And I'm so happy to be here. I'm trying to figure out how to share my screen because I don't usually use WebEx. Does anybody have a...
Yeah, Amy, you have the presenter privileges. There should be a share.
Yeah, it says that I have to change my security settings for some reason. Do you?
It might. Then in that case, it's a setting on your computer. It might be asking for permission to share from another.
I don't do my intro slides, but we'll let the students make sure that their computer is set up so they can share. So you guys should just go ahead, and I'll just give you the intro orally that I was going to just share some slides with you.
Amy, so anyway, can you let me know in that case who I should pass the presenter privileges to?
I think they're already presenters. It says Syracuse Architecture.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
And if you guys need anybody else with presenter privileges, if you have multiple computers, just speak up and let us know. So again, my name's Amy Chester, and a lot of you know me from being the director of Rebuild by Design for the past 9 years. Through that work, we've been working very closely with community boards in Lower Manhattan on the Big U, which I know you're very familiar with. And out of community conversations that we've had for the past couple of years, we got the idea that we could need a little bit of help from students to help us think about what could happen north of Chambers Street on the west side of Manhattan, which is the area that is not yet funded. So I approached Syracuse University now about a year ago, and they asked myself to teach a class along with Jeanette Sordo, who's not here tonight. But we do teach a class called Cities at Risk, looking at the west side of Manhattan and trying to imagine what a green district would look like, having the students do all of the research work, the outreach work, etc. So the class is to teach students to address present day problems and challenges and to have experiences presenting and incorporating feedback from stakeholders like you. So if you're willing, please put on your camera so it would be like as if they're in person. But if you're not, don't worry, we understand you're probably multitasking right now. So the class focuses on Chamber Street to Central Park, from the waterfront to 6th Avenue, and we have 15 students that are broken up into 5 groups studying each different neighborhoods, and they're going to give recommendations to address flooding, increased rain, storm surge, urban heat island, carbon reduction, and social resilience by the end of their semester. And these students are working on addressing the flood risk and really thinking about the opportunity to design different types of elements, technology, nature-based solutions to increase resilience and quality of life. We taught the first semester and published a book that I will give you online, and we have a few copies if anybody needs it. I'm just putting it in the chat right now.
I'm holding one up. You should get it. It's superb right here.
I don't know why it's not letting me post. Oh, maybe because I have to do it to everybody.
Amy, you can send it to me and,
Okay,
and I will
absolutely.
send it to everybody.
Okay, I'll do that when we're done. And the students are going to make a presentation tonight, about 10, 15 minutes-ish, and then they're going to ask for your feedback. So we hope that you'll give them your honest feedback and also be nice to them because this is their first time doing anything like this. So I'll turn it over to the students to let them introduce themselves now.
Thanks a lot, Amy. And that means that everyone has to pay attention and ask very pertinent questions and give helpful commentary. Okay, take it away, students. Thank you so much.
Perfect. Go for it when you're ready.
We're trying to share our screen.
Are you getting a privacy error too?
I think no, we're just trying to find this share screen.
Okay. So the share button's on your bottom of your screen.
Share screen.
There you go.
Okay.
And go to your presentation.
Can you see the presentation right now?
Yes, and just go into, there's perfect.
Okay, okay, thank you, Amy, for giving us the introduction, and thank you all for having us today. So we're undergraduate students from the Syracuse University School of Architecture. I'm Lauren, this is Jasmine and April. And as per Amy's presentation, we're doing a class that aims to create green districts in the west side of Manhattan, and the area that we are in charge of is North Tribeca. So we've only been able to look at data online. We've never lived in the district or had a lot of firsthand experience about the problems there. So I guess the purpose of this meeting is to sort of get your input and feedback on our research, so that we can create more accurate design interventions for your district. So the district that we're covering is North Tribeca, south to north from Chamber Street to Canal Street, and east to west from West Broadway and Varick Street to the Hudson River Park Piers in Battery Park City. So for our agenda, we'll first go through some of our research and talk about some major issues we identified. And then we would like to ask you to participate in a survey and a Q&A session for us to understand your opinions. So we'll talk about some of our research that we did. First, for the demographics, the area is a high-income, wealthy area, and It's mostly white people and mostly young to middle age, so 20 to 40 years of age. In terms of building and land use types, it's mostly high-end restaurants and boutiques with some residential and parks. And the building style has a lot of renovated pre-Civil War architecture with loft-style low rises and a few skyscrapers from different time periods. We also wanted to identify some future climate issues that we thought would be prevalent. So the main climate risk we found was flooding in the area, and the inland lots would experience a lot of projected flooding. And because almost all ground consists of impervious surfaces, that will increase the runoff in the area. And mitigating the risk of flooding could protect historical buildings and provide more accessibility from subway and bus routes, and that will subsequently boost businesses. There is also a problem of high energy use since it's a commercial and industrial area, and lowering energy use could improve air quality. And besides these, there's also the issue generally of climate change, and rising temperatures would create more intense, unpredictable weather conditions like intense heat and cold. So now we will delve deeper into the major issues we identified. We see the major issues as two more objective issues, which are flooding and high energy consumption, and two more subjective issues that we identified from data online, but are finding it hard to make assumptions off of data alone. So these are cold wind or intense weather in general, and also mental health issues. We will also talk about some strategies and built forms that we think might help with these issues. They mostly deal with more green space, more spaces of social gathering, and flood prevention structures. And here's a diagram that provides an overview, but I'll hand it to Jasmine to talk more about the details.
So the first issue that we would like to talk about is the flooding, especially from Chambers Street to Canal Street, except for the waterfront side. So the data that we found on this map shows that there's a large floodplain in this area, and as we visit the site, so we found that the buildings near the river are raised, but not much protection for the buildings that are more inland. And there's also many buildings were built during the pre-Civil War period, which are more fragile to be destroyed by the flood. So as you can see from this map about storm surge, the projection of storm inundation by using records from the Hurricane Sandy shows that it will mainly affect areas along the waterfront and the Canal Street, and also 6th Avenue, while the whole area will be flooded. Since the number 20 bus and train 1, 2, and 3 line are the main public transportation instruments, people may have issues with travel vertically through the city when there's flood. So when there's extreme weather, people in this district will have a hard time because the losing of accessibility to the public transportations. So here's are the toolkits that we suggested that could be implemented into this area. So the first one is the raised subway grates. So the raised air ventilation grates for the subway could slow down the flooding in the subway. And the second one is the floodgates, which could be placed along the riverside. It's made of metal panels to block water from come into the neighborhood. And the third one is the water plaza, which is basically a playground that dig into the ground and to create leisure space, which could be implemented into the existing vacant space in Tribeca. The fourth one is to creating water ponds and growing water vegetation to slow down the flood and soak the water. So there's a case study that we have looked into, which is called Sponge City in Shenzhen, China. So it has a similar condition due to the high urban density and cause most of the surfaces to be impervious. And they have applied rain gardens, sloped roofs, planting drought and flood resistance plan to filter and absorbing the rainwater. So they basically have 3 layers of soil for permeating, infiltrating, and purifying the rainwater, and then eventually recycle it. So the second issue that we looked into is about energy consumption. So we found that because this area is full of residential and restaurants, businesses, and electric vehicle charging ports, so this might be the potential reason why this area is so high energy consumption. And we've also found out that because this is a top 1%, almost top 1% income district, so it has like this higher tendency to consume more energy. So looked into the map that we have, the east side of this community has relatively high value on energy consumption, while the green space coverage that could be used to absorb the CO2 gas is less than the rest of the community has. And about the air quality, so it's performing well generally within this area, but the district near main roads and commercial areas where the human activities happens more frequently tend to have a higher temperature and worse air quality. So here are the 4 toolkits that we suggested could be applied. So the first aspect is to improve walkability, which is to decrease the cars and the greenhouse gas emission. So we have the first one is the green corridors, which is to plant trees and create filtering pipes underground to keep the street dry. And the second one is the street shading, which has those artificial canopies to provide cooling space in a certain area that lack of trees covers. The second aspect that we have is lowering the heat island effect. So the container trees could be grown in containers and in almost any locations, even if it's a asphalt ground. And the fourth one is it's a cool roofs, which is to use reflective colors or angled roofs to reflect the sunlight to reduce the temperature. And the case study we have is the Brainport Smart District. So it's a dense community in Netherlands, which has at least 1,500 homes and 30 acres of businesses. This is where the residents are encouraged to adopt shared energy generation and land cultivation.
So the third issues that we want to talk about is the cold wind issue. And we think that cold wind is the one issue that happens to the whole New York City in the wintertime. And since Tribeca has sparse tree coverage and no tall buildings that blocks wind along the riverside, so the pedestrian walkways are not shielded. And it will decrease the walkability at the front waterfront. And you can see from the chart that in the wintertime, the wind speed will be around like 8 to 12 miles per hour, and the people will just feel uncomfortable to walk at 10 miles per hour. And so this is a map for heavy rain and cold wind, and you can see the flood, which is the blue color that are mainly concentrated at West Street, Canal Street, and the Broadway. And since the cold wind most come from like the west side, and the West Street will experience the most severe weather issues. So here are some toolkits that we think would help to improve the condition. First is redesigning the streetscape by repositioning the cars and the peoples, adding tree belts, and have some district restrictions. Second is green corridors by planting trees and creating on-the-ground piping system to keep the street wet. And third is multifunction areas, and we can create some constructions that to provide a temporary safe place or higher ground level when like facing heavy rains and wind issues for the pedestrians. So the case study we looked into is the program that they did in Edmonton, Canada. And it's a city that experienced frigid wind, and they want to encourage people to go out in the wintertime. So what they do is like they use tree coverage and redesigning the tall buildings orientation to adapt to the wind. And they also paint some bright colors in interior space to make people feel warm by visual. They also did like grow some dense rows of evergreens to serve as effective wind blockers along the popular walkways. And the other issue that we found is about the social resilience, which is the depression rate as like a mental illness. And we found that the mental illness in the Tribeca is higher than like other places in the New York, like Bronx and Queens. And what we think is like what may cause this is because the higher competition in Tribeca, since this is like a top percentage of income area. And also we see the east side of Tribeca is like darker in the diagram. So it has like a higher depression rate than the west side. And our guess is because the west side has more cultural and environmental programs. And the study shows that the more diversified greenery space could help to reduce the depression rate. So the toolkit that we think may be helpful is the multifunction areas by creating some like playgrounds to help people to relieve stress, and also water plaza as a leisure space for people to go. And this is just like an overall map to recap what we found as issues in the Tribeca. And there are like energy consumption, flooding, cold wind, and depression rate issues. And finally, at the end, we will have like a short survey for everyone, and we would appreciate that you take like 5 minutes to take this and give us feedback. And feel free if you have any questions to ask. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. That was really terrific. I've had the pleasure of seeing some of this a little bit before, so I'm going to hold off on my comments because I think I've already made them, but I really think it's a tremendous piece of work, and it is such a treat and so important to see academia interface with so-called real world. It's really thank you and your professors to guide you to do this kind of work. It's superb. And the book is beautiful. The maps, as everyone could see tonight, are just extraordinary. I couldn't quite read the provenance of some of your statistics and data. I was very intrigued by the mental health data, but I'm sure if I look more carefully at the screen, I'll be able to see it. Anyway,
Can I just jump in? Sorry, I just wanted to,
Yeah.
before you call on people, that to tell the students to please put the link into the chat so
Yeah.
everyone can take the survey.
Yeah. Thank you. So I encourage community board members to, make comments that might be helpful, or if you have questions, and just ways to move forward with the research they're doing and all. So I see Wendy's got her hand up.
And I'll remind the students that you're still sharing screen so we can see what you're doing. Okay, perfect.
Yeah, you guys did a great job. Congratulations. I'm so appreciative that you took a look at everything. And like Alice, I have a few questions as to where you pulled your data from, but we can get to that later. But, so all of us on this committee sit through a tremendous amount of presentations about, how we're going to deal with climate change in the future. And so I will tell you, your presentation was, spot on with a lot of good information. So you should give yourselves a pat on the back. I'm curious. I want to talk a little bit more about the flood, gates that you have. And one of the things that we hear a lot about, and I'm just curious if you thought about it, is the concept of a passive flood mitigation versus active flood mitigation, which gates move and have to be installed or set up or mechanically adjusted when a flood is coming, versus passive systems help with the, you know, as time goes on, especially if sea level rises. Could you, I didn't get a sense of that from you exactly. Did you know, tell me more about that piece of it? Because this active versus passive is a big part of a lot of the presentations we see.
Could you talk a little bit more about the passive?
Yeah, so passive would be like building a deep wall that becomes goes down to, you know, deep in the ground, like almost like you build almost a bathtub wall, so that and then you make a berm. So it becomes, you know, a lot of times it's a wall that's covered by earth. Sometimes it's just a wall, or sometimes it's actually thick glass that they put along the sides of the building. That's one of the things they're going to do a little south of what you looked at in Battery Park. There is a museum right on the edge, and they are going to build marine glass that they would use in an aquarium. It's very thick. And they're going to basically put that all along the front of the building, so you can still see the building and especially see through the windows. But when the water comes, that marine glass will hold back the sea. It's actually the Hudson River. So, you know, the tricky part where you're looking is basically down the middle of the West Side Highway, or West Street, that you see. That has one of the largest, or a very large combined sewer overflow that goes around all under the, there's a median between the traffic that's going north and south. And so that's a tricky thing to do. And, you know, it's like and if they put something up there in that corner right where you're looking, and unfortunately I've heard too many of these presentations, we know that you have to build something 18 feet in some parts of it up high, and not all of us are pretty excited about seeing an 18-foot wall being put up in our neighborhood between us and the Hudson River. But other times they talk about flip up gates, which I didn't know if that's what you were talking about. So I don't know, have I gone on and on about something that doesn't make sense? I'm not sure.
No, it definitely makes sense, and we've never heard about this before, so that's an interesting thing that we will do more research on, I guess, and hope to incorporate in our scheme.
Well, let us make you available. I personally will do a FaceTime or any sort of call. Anybody else on the committee, this is my neighborhood. I walk it all the time. I will walk you around with FaceTime and show you and talk to you if you'd like to do that, because anyone paying attention to this is very exciting for us, because we have been yelling at the top of our lungs, right, Alice, to any and all on the federal, state, and local level. We say there's no funding for even a plan right now. I mean, the federal government hopefully is finally getting around to that with the HAT study, but for a long time we had no money, no plan. So I love that as an undergraduate student, you're doing this. Now, I'm sure you don't really want to spend time with me on a FaceTime call, but if you do, let me know. I have college age kids as well, so I totally get it if you're going to like, lady, listen, no, thank you.
That is quite an offer, Wendy.
Thank you, Wendy.
Yeah.
I will jump in and I rescue the students a little bit, is that they might not be familiar with active and passive terminology, but they are very familiar with the big U, and I will tell them that that's considered more passive in almost all of the places, because it's built into the structure of the land and it only requires the connections in certain places.
That's right, where the road and the sidewalks are, which would be quite complicated. But listen, thank you very much. And I just wanted to also let you know there's very little, just a little technical thing is the pre-civil, you know, the time period. You know, we have a lot of warehouses that have been converted into a residential. Maybe Alice can talk more about that, you know, but we can get into that. There's some minor little things. Again, if we walk around, I'd be happy to show you what's here. But thank you, thank you, thank you. Great job.
Thank you so
Thank you
much.
so much.
And
Yeah.
the students didn't mention that they have walked the district, you know, many times. They haven't just been looking at studies, and they've done their own. We didn't show you everything, but they've done their own analysis of the different typologies and different blocks. And
that's awesome. Thank you,
Wendy. I'm
It
sure they'd love to
certainly
do that.
Does anyone else have some helpful comments or thoughts they want to share with the students from Team Community Board? Bob Schneck. Thanks, Bob.
I suppose when I think about climate change and along the Hudson coast, I think of the forces that are involved, and I wonder about what you study in college to understand the kind of forces of storm surge, how powerful they are, the forces of how storm surge relates to sea level rise, how the different forces kind of work out. I often wonder, one thing I worry about is whether or not the storms are getting more powerful, and that as they get more powerful, they get more dangerous and they can do more damage. So in your studies, how do you approach how high things are, kind of where you build them, and kind of how they work? Because it's an architecture of the geology of the place and where the buildings are and where we need protection. So how did you arrive at your ideas? What did you learn first?
I guess we looked at information from different sources, or like applications such as GIS, which gives us like projected floodplains 50 years away, or projective flood areas, like areas where places would have more severe flooding in the future. We also looked at data from Hurricane Sandy, and we based our assumptions off of that as a worst case scenario.
I'll jump in. If anyone would like to see the syllabus for the class, I'll happily share it with you. It has a lot of links of really good documents that might be helpful to you. I will say that this class specifically is the second semester, so they base a lot of their work on the research that the first semester class did. All the data that they have created in that book, which is also labeled where they have it. So these students kind of like picked it up from where the other students had left off, and they weren't starting from what we would call ground zero.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else want to provide any comments or thoughts?
I would. This is just Wendy again. I'm curious about how depressed are we?
Okay.
I think from the data that we looked at, it's like a 19%, I think, of among the whole Tribeca.
Can you explain where the data came from? Because we've gone over this a few times. I was quite surprised to hear this information too.
Yeah, the data also came from GIS, so it's yeah, we have the
link of the website if you want it.
Was that right after Hurricane Sandy?
No, I think it's recent data.
Yeah, that's more
recent
current
years.
data.
Maybe put it at the link in the chat so they can check it out too.
I think the question isn't so much obviously from GIS, but rather where did GIS go to get there?
Exactly. They'll
Okay.
send it to you of
Yeah,
like where
all right.
GIS pulled the data from.
We're all interested.
Yeah.
All right.
The students have a really great opportunity because they can pull a lot of information from Syracuse University that they have subscriptions to.
That's fantastic. All right, we have two more. Jeff Galloway. Thanks, Jeff.
I thought it was a great presentation. Thank you. I apologize that I lost internet connection, so I missed part of the presentation. And so my question may go over something that you've already covered. But I caught part of the discussion of energy consumption, including related to transportation. And I just wanted to make sure that as you analyze mitigation measures for those kinds of things, that you take account of the fact that much of transportation is that you don't treat Tribeca as an isolated community. A lot of the transportation is transportation through the area, as opposed to transportation within the area. And so in terms of, I mean, car ownership is probably actually quite low in Tribeca, even though there's quite a bit of traffic on some of the streets. And so to the extent you're in your studies and recommendations, you want to mitigate either emissions or non-green modes of transportation. Keep in mind that a lot of the transportation burden is transitory through the area, and so we would need to address sort of more regional transportation issues and not just within the community itself. So that's my only little point to make.
Thanks, Jeff. That was great and helpful. And then Vera Sun, thank you.
Hi, I wanted to thank all three of you, Jasmine, April, and Lauren. That was really wonderful. I'm also still focused on the mental state that we're in, which seems like to be a very in that area of Tribeca, where actually my sister and her family lives. How much do you all think that this is so? You think it's directly linked to the fact that we don't have enough open space or enough wind protection? And if so, what do you think is the first thing we need to do in order to address that?
I guess we don't think that it's related to some of the problems that we talked about. I guess we wanted to get you guys' opinion from the survey to better understand why this is happening. But we were just thinking that maybe it was related to the demographics and the general social resilience in the area, and we thought things like maybe community gardens or public spaces that people can socialize, and those kind of places would increase the social solidarity.
Great. That's what I thought you might be getting towards. Fantastic. Thank you all for your hard work.
Thank you.
All right, I think we've come to the end of the questions. Anybody else? Attendees? Okay. Well, a big thank you to you all. Really great work and congratulations as you finish up. See a little applause here with the little hands up. I should, it's a good segue just to say that it's sort of an informative set of walks that are being planned by the Battery Park City Authority. So just south of what you've studied in Battery Park City, as you're probably well aware, the southernmost point, Wagner Park, is going to go under demolition and construction starting this July, and the community board asked for it, has received 2 dates where they'll be doing walking tours on the site. Great. And I encourage you all to go. We'll make this public, of course, but just keep in your hats. That's Saturday, April 23rd at 1 p.m. and Thursday, April 28th at 4 p.m. And there were also extraordinary models made by the architects, landscape architects, perhaps engineers too, working on this project, which we've asked to be put on public display, and the authority is going to do that for us. We'll get those dates very shortly. The venue will be 200 Rector Place, the community room. So yeah, that's great stuff. So anyway, call it a night unless anyone else has any updates or information they want to impart. Otherwise, we bid you all adieu and very grateful for everyone's time. Thanks so much and good night.
Thank you, Alice. So thankful for your partnership.
Always. Thank you.
Good job.
Good night.